So motherfuckers, welcome to a new masterclass, and the today video is going to be about attack with opposite color bishops. Many people think that opposite color bishops are drawn normally when there are only the bishops used to be drawn, but with queens over the board, the opposite color bishops turns into so aggressive, and there are many attack perspectives. And sometimes there are a huge difference between one bishop and the other, but huge difference more than with normal bishop of the same color. And we're going to see example of that happened in the European Club Cup between Alina, Bivol, and Jiner. So let's analyze them. I want to start here. And the majority of the times that this huge difference between the opposite color bishop happened used to be in the Sicilian. They are so typical in the Sicilian that the dark square bishop of black used to be so much better than the light square bishop of white. Now I saw this difference between both bishop in many games. I once read a book about trade pieces who talk about this specific theme. And I saw the other day watching games of the European. So, okay, we're going to start here the game. Of course, this game of a Sicilian, of an idol Sicilian. Okay, into power fast the game. Now, piece was tried on d5, and now the last piece who trade was the knight. And now after queen takes e5, we reach a position with opposite color bishop and the big pieces, the queens and the rook. Of course, here d takes e5 was a bad move because just queen h5 and take this pawn, and it have no sense for black. So black best move was queen takes e5, keeping this long diagonal open for the dark square bishop. Okay, now we're going to understand why black is better here. The principal reason is because his bishop is better than his opponent bishop. And this in opposite color bishop is going to be crucial because you never can trade the one bishop for the other. Okay, let's understand why the bishops are there are so much difference between the bishops. Okay, now we can see that black have his central pawns in the same square of his bishop, which is bad. Of course, it's bad for black, and white have his central pawns in the same color for his bishop, which is bad too. So for the moment, talking only about central pawns, we are more or less in the unequal condition. What's the huge difference? That the most advanced the central pawn of white is blocked, so cannot be out of the light square. So this pawn is going to be the d5 pawn is going to be in a light square for all the light. And but the opposite is that the central pawn of the more advanced central pawn of black, okay, now is in a dark square, but this pawn is not blocked by a pawn. So this bishop maybe one day can be open. One day you can push this pawn with the help of g6, f5, and this pawn is going to be in light square. So this bishop is going to be open. But the principal reason is that the central pawn of white is blocked, and the central pawn of black is not blocked. And apart of all of this, black have an extra long diagonal here open, and white didn't have this type of long diagonal. So now it can look like the uh, white bishop is open. Can look like the white bishop have an open diagonal, and the dark bishop is more close. But okay, now that's the real situation. But some moves later, black is going to play g6, f5, completely blockading the light square bishop, and after that, bishop f6 and e4, the dark square bishop is going to open completely, and the white bishop is going to completely be closed. So that's why black is better. Now we're going to see the game, and we're going to see that you won in a so easy way the game. So let's analyze the game. I've been talking for 4 minutes, but this is because it's so important to understand why black is better in this position. So now let's see the game. Alina plays queen g4 without understand what is the black's plan, because if you know what is the black plan, you didn't play queen g4. The black plan is, okay, like I told, g6, f5, and e4. Yes, blockading the right square bishop of white and open his dark square bishop. The plan is clear. When there are opposite color bishop, you should activate your bishop and close your opponent bishop. This is more or less clear. And with queen g6, with queen g4, you are putting for the photo. In Spain we say like that. I don't know how to say in English, but you are putting, yes, when g6 f5 coming, this is going to gain with tempo over the queen. so have no sense to play queen g4 here. If black plan is play f5, I don't understand why you should play queen g4 with black a free tempo. The best white defense to try to hold the game is queen f3, bishop d8, b3, g6, threatening f5. And why should play if black is threatening f5? g4. Just stop g5, f5. Doesn't matter if you open your king, you are open more dark square, doesn't matter. But the most important thing is not allow black to play f5. Because if black plays f5 here, it's going to be completely fine. So not allow black to play f5. Okay, so g4, for example, if rook ad1, just f5 and just black is winning. Now this bishop is coming to f6, then e4 is coming, and this bishop is going to have this huge diagonal. Now can come to d4, to c3, and the problem is the light square bishop is going to be completely bad. So g4 is an obligate move. Bishop g5, king g2, king h8. When your opponent only have one color bishop, it's used to be better to place your king in a square of the opposite color. Rook e2, b6, queen c8, and okay, black is better, of course, but white is more or less holding the position now because he's stopping the move f5. Instead of that, Alina doesn't understand the position and plays just queen g4. Here, g6 was better. You doesn't play g6 directly, but was better just to follow by f5. Maybe she's scared about some queen d7. So for that reason, she plays rook a8, who is completely normal, stopping queen d7, and then she's going to play g6, f4, f5, sorry. Here, queen h3 again is better, so because the queen is just bad place on g4, g6, and now I can try to trade queens, because not only to trade, because after queen takes, you can take with the pawn some days and try to block the move e4. And I told that this light square bishop is also bad because this pawn is blocked. But now the a5 pawn is blocked too for the bishop. So, and apart, the opposite color bishop are so good to attack with queens over the board, are so dangerous. But without queens, now there are more possibilities of make a draw, especially if you block your opponent's here your opponent's e4 advance, of course. So for that reason, for black here was better just keep the queens over the board and then play f5, e4. Okay, rook e3, trying to attack, but finally came f6, g6 will move by you. Here I analyze a little bit bishop f5, but just king h8, rook h3, rook g8. But it's a good try to attack a little bit with white, and for the moment you are stopping the move f5. But you cannot stop forever now. The bishop is threat, so f5, and just e4, and let's see. White have placed all his pawns on the same color of the light square bishop, so now the light square bishop are completely blockaded, and black have the whole long diagonal for his dark square bishop. So now black is here just winning. Okay, rook g3. Now here, no, sorry, Fu hesitates a little bit with king h8 when f5 was theoretically was possible, but he makes a normal master move when you have a technically winning position with king h8 just followed by f5, you didn't want to allow counterplay and to just to complicate the game. You just want to win the game in a so easy way. But it's true that f5 works here, and after bishop f5, king h8, bishop d3, queen f2, rook f4, and rook f8. But it's completely understandable that when you have the advantage, you didn't want to allow counterplay. So maybe it was in the practical, in the practical, the most intelligent decision was just king h8 and just prepare f5. Yeah, now rook g8, defending g6, and f5. Finally, f5 comes to the game with a huge advantage for black. We saw that black shouldn't hurry with this plan. First, black plays rook d8, defending the square d7. This shows that the black advantage is a long-term advantage. You don't need to make a specific concrete moves in the following moves. I will calculate. You just can play quietly and play g6, f5, what you want, more or less, without hurry anything. G6, and now see first improve his king. defend the g pawn, and then finally plays f5 with a winning position. Now we're going to see that the rest of the game was more or less easy for Su after making this plan. To tell that the white position was completely hopeless. Queen d1. Here, rook a8 was fine. Now with the plan of bishop d8, bishop d6, I thought that uh, after e4 this can be a huge diagonal for this bishop, but this diagonal is going to be fine too, to place the bishop on b6. I prefer to attack the king than attack a b pawn. So rook a8, bishop d8, and bishop b6 was fine. But okay, rook d8 was a good move too. a5 and just e4. Open the long diagonal. So now the black plan is play bishop f6, but what happened that after e6, now the b6 square is free. And I thought that was better to attack the f2 pawn than the b2 pawn. I prefer to enter on f2. So for that reason, to goes with bishop d8, sacrificing the pawn. The pawn doesn't matter. It's not going to promote or anything. The most important is just activate the pieces. When you have the opposite color bishop position, it's more important the majority of the time to activate the pieces and to play active than the material. The material in opposite color bishop are not used to be so important. What's more important just activate your pieces. So keep this tip on your mind. Okay, let's end off analyze the game. Bishop b6, yes, black is just win d2, should attack, should defend, and now rook e7 to capture the pawn. Of course, this pawn is not going to promote, but one day you should capture, no? And the most important is that here white have no active plan. Let's see, let's analyze this bishop. This bishop have no square. Now you cannot go no to e2 because this pawn is hanging. To d3 is blockaded. This pawn blockaded your bishop. The rook are not making nothing. The rook had apart the rooks need open 5 to work, and the position is completely closed, so the rooks cannot enter. The only thing that are open here is the darkest squares. The long diagonal of the dark square. That's the only thing open in this position. And black have the plenty control of that. Because of course white have no bishop to cover that. Rook b3, attacking the pawn. Yeah, rook b7, you cannot take. Because, well, of course, here there are queen f2, but for example, if, if rook here, black have take, rook f2 and win the chain, so you cannot take this pawn. Rook a4, and now black is still defending the pawn. And the early h4, and now very good move of Jiner, queen d4. I thought that um, to attack with opposite color bishop is better if you have the queens over the board, who is completely true, but now this so bad bishop and this so strong e pawn, a part of the passive b3 rook, is going to make that black doesn't need the queens to attack. Black is just the black idea is trade queens, then trade one pair of rooks, and enter in the rook with the other rook. In the a5, sorry, with the other rook. At the time that the b3 rook is going to be so passive. And that's why what Su makes. Queen f4, queen f6, bishop h2, bishop d4. Rook here, bishop c5, just defending before, defending d6 and blockading the c pawn. Queen e6, f4, good move. And finally he forced the black to trade queens, queen g5, take, and now the second part of the black plan, who is rook a7. If he trades, the huge problem is that the b3 rook is completely misplaced here. If the rook at least was on a7 or something, maybe white can try to defend. But this rook, the only square that he has is h3. And after h3, you haven't so much. Maybe you can go to h4 or something, but the rook is completely misplaced. For that reason, Alina tries to maintain the only rook that he has, but the only active rook, but the rook on c6 is misplaced too. It's not going to anywhere. Just have to activate the rook, attacking the bishop, and now he just take the pawn. So rook h3. Here, for example, bishop g3 obligates black to give the exchange, but you don't need to make that because you can make bishop g3 when you want. So just rook d8 was better, defending the pawn. And now to capture the pawn, he repeats some moves to increase his time in the clock, to have more time in the clock. And he finally plays bishop e5, threatening f3, rook c7, f3, g3, h5, the game just defend rook h7. Like I told in opposite color Bishop doesn't matter the material because with h5 you allowed it h6, but this is not important. The important thing is that you put passive the h3 rook f7, and just after rook e2, mm, Alina resigned. I really like this game. I think that it's very instructive to learn how to play opposite color position and to especially to evaluate well the position because in the initial position is just huge advantage for black. So it's important first learn how to play with both colors and learn in which type of position you want to enter and in which type of position you didn't want to enter. Especially if you play Sicilian, this position happen many times. So I'm going to post more videos of middle game masterclasses. Some days ago, I posted 3 videos about endgame masterclasses and another about opening tricks. So let's see the videos. Bye bye, motherfuckers.